What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we're going to be continuing our look at the battle card from Wave 2 of the Transformers TCG, Rise of the Combiners, that sets out on the 1st of March. I am running out of time to get through all of these cards, but don't worry, I got your back, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we are going to be looking at a couple of cards that let you scrap cards from your opponent, and one card that stops you doing so. That's right. So let's have a start off by having a little bit of a look at Espionage. Espionage, ladies and gentlemen, is a lovely new action card with a white and a green pip. Now, this is really quite nice. White pip means that if you flip it while attacking or defending, you get to draw 2 extra cards, but only for the first white pip you flip. And green means that if you flip it while attacking or defending, you may at the end of the battle scrap a card from your hand and pick this up instead. It is at the end of the battle, so if that happens, you still get the white icon. Cool. So we like the icon, but what does it do? You choose a battle icon color, then look at your opponent's hand and scrap a card from it that has a battle icon of that color. So you say blue, and your opponent shows you their hand, which, incidentally, that in and of itself gives you information you can use as you go through the game. That tells you things that you can use to try and take advantage of your opponent's situation. And then, if they've got a card of a blue icon, you get to scrap it, which is rather nice. Now, lead designer of the Transformers TCG, Ken Nagel, he did do a little article, little note on the Transformers TCG Facebook a couple of days ago explaining about this, so go check that out on the official Facebook for Transformers. But essentially, this adds a little bit of skill into the game, because you can whiff on this. You can absolutely play this and whiff entirely. But you can also get rid of really good cards. And the green icon is very important here, because if your opponent's playing a card of a green icon, then when they play that card, they may well end up not immediately playing it. Especially if they flipped it and then it's your turn. Because, well, you're going to know what's in their hand. So you are going to know one of the cards that's in their hand. And look, if it's got a green icon and they chose to take it back into their hand, chances are they probably want that card in the near future. I mean, especially, let's say it's something like Focus Fire. Focus Fire would be kind of hilarious here, because Focus Fire is one of those where you can play all 3 at once, and if you do, you get Bold 6, which is crazy high. So if you can get rid of one of them before they've had a chance to play them, you take them down from Bold 6 to Bold 3. That is a significant difference. So I kind of like this a lot. The other thing is, maybe you're playing against an Insecticon deck that's gone full orange. Maybe they're only playing cards in their deck that have orange pips. They're going Peace Through Tyranny, and they're going things like Supercharge, and that means that picking orange is quite likely to result in a good thing for you. Although, to be fair, even when they're going orange, they still probably see a couple of white icons in there. But outside of that, yeah, that's going to make it pretty good. Or maybe you're literally just sat there thinking, as long as they don't drop a force field, I know I can do enough damage next turn to win the game. So you play this and you choose white. And maybe you whiff, but it doesn't really matter, because you're just thinking, don't play force field, don't play force field, don't play force field, don't play force field, and then you're fine. Or maybe you're really worried about a system reboot, because you do not want your opponent to scrap your hand, and you know they play system reboot, so you go white and hope to get around it. There are a lot of good things about this, and look, it's not an easy card to use. You've got to choose when to pick it up with your green icon. You've got to choose when to play it. You've got to choose which battle icon you go for. It's going to be easier in some decks than others. Some decks are going to have a much narrower use, but some decks are going to be going fairly even orange and blue with a few whites and greens mixed in. But one more point I want to make about this before we move on to our second card in this video. This really punishes double icon cards. Cards like Rollout, which are just flat out phenomenal, and you flip all your Transformers. Come on, that's nuts good. But also has an orange and a blue icon. Well, if you choose orange, you can get rid of this. And if you choose blue, you can get rid of this. That really helps. Another way we can scrap cards is using the card Fog of War. Now, Fog of War's kind of a weird one. It's got a white icon, which we like, and each player chooses 2 cards from their hand and scraps the rest, or draws until they've got 2 cards in hand. Basically, it normalizes both players to have exactly 2 cards in hand. And this seems like a really specific way of playing the game. If you're playing with fewer cards than your opponent, this is going to be really good, especially if your opponent's trying to build up cards in their hand. So let's say you're playing Dinobots, because this is the one that really springs to mind with me when I think about this. Dino Chomp, discard your entire hand, but you get bold 5, and then you generally use Dinobot Snarl to draw until you got 2 cards. But this would do the same thing while punishing your opponent. But in Wave 2, we've also got the Dinobot Sludge, and the Dinobot Sludge lets you draw 2 cards if you've got fewer cards in hand than your opponent. So it's very likely if you're playing Dinobots, you're going to be trying to make sure that you've got fewer cards in hand than your opponent. So with something like Dinobots here, this seems like a great card, because you can really take advantage of the I'm planning to have fewer cards in hand than you, so I'm rolling. I mean, imagine, and it's not the easiest combo to pull off, I fully understand that. But imagine playing a Brainstorm to let you play 2 actions. Dropping a Dino Chomp to give yourself bold 5, then dropping a Fog of War to go back to 2 cards in hand while hurting your opponent. And I cannot talk about this without talking about Bombshell. Bombshell is a phenomenal card that's coming out in Wave 2, and in bot mode, when you attack, instead of doing the whole attacking thing, you can scrap a number of cards from your hand equal to the number of stars on the defending character, and then KO the defender without ever having to go through the actual battle. So what Bombshell is going to try and do, I mean, against RC, it's just going to be like, yeah, 5 cards, good. Although even then, this gets them down to 2, so that would work. But against something like Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend, it's going to take a little while. It's going to take a little bit of an effort to get 13 cards in hand here. But that's okay. We've got drawing options. I looked at stuff like Universal Network Access in a previous video. But that's okay for you as a Fog of War player, because if your opponent is trying to build a handful of lots and lots of cards, Fog of War is going to absolutely wreck their plan. Fog of War is not a card you can play in every deck. It is not something you can rely on. But it absolutely is the kind of card that you can use to hurt an opponent who's got more cards in hand than you. Any deck that really relies on having lots of cards in hand, brilliant. But it's not all about them. You can play a deck yourself that aims to have fewer cards in hand, and you can use that to hurt your opponent. So maybe you're a little bit sad, right? I've been talking about Espionage and Fog of War and scrapping all these cards. Surely there's something we can do about it, and the great news is yes. Yes, there absolutely is. We've got Spare Parts. Now, Spare Parts is an upgrade utility, and it's got a white icon, which we very much like. And it's got a green icon, which means that we can get it back while attacking or defending, which we very much like. And it reads, if an opponent's card would cause a weapon or armor to be scrapped from the upgraded character, scrap this card instead. Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, I slow rolled you a little bit. Unfortunately, Espionage and Fog of War stop you scrapping cards from your hand. Spare Parts stops weapons and armor being scrapped. And don't get me wrong, right, this is a really good answer to something like Ramming Speed, which people will play to try and get rid of something like Force Field. And clearly here, we are looking at Force Field, at least I'm looking at Force Field here. It's an armor that guarantees you can't take more than 4 damage. So your opponent's going to want to try and get rid of it and do a big attack to KO you. So you play Spare Parts to stop that happening. And the fact that it's got a green icon means that if you flip it while attacking or defending, you get to just put it in your hand, making it much, much easier to find. It's a really, really nice card. if you really like your armor and weapons, and why would you not? Doesn't help against utilities, incidentally. If your opponent's trying to scrap your utilities, they absolutely can, and there is nothing they can do about it, but that's okay. It still helps your armor and your weapons. We can be greedy and say we'd rather it helped our utility, and obviously we do, or we can be happy. What I will say is, this stops them being scrapped. Whereas if your opponent uses Inferno, for instance, to make you pick up all of your upgrades, this isn't going to prevent it. It's still going to go through. Or if your opponent plays Disarm to return upgrades to your hand, this isn't going to prevent it. This stops your opponent discarding upgrades. It does not stop your opponent putting upgrades into your hand. Feel free to ask this as a ruling question, because we do know that Transformers do these weekly rules updates, and then I bring you videos about them because I very much enjoy doing that. But this seems fairly clear. It stops scrapping. It does not stop them leaving the character, or words to that effect. So, okay, spare parts doesn't quite fit with the other two, but it is very much a spare part. I cannot get through all these battle cards by the 1st of March without popping a few in together, and this seemed like a good a place as any. I like spare parts. I don't know how many decks are going to find room for it, but if you are really reliant on your weapons or armor, you've got to give it a go. As for Fog of War, I love it, but only in some decks. You've really got to be confident you've got fewer cards than your opponent, or else it's really not going to help you very much. And then we can take a quick look back at Espionage and go, it takes a lot of skill, and it takes a bit of luck. Sometimes luck, sometimes skill. Sometimes both. But I tell you what, this could absolutely turn the game in your favour. So they are the cards from Wave 2 that let you scrap or prevent scrapping. So at this stage, I'd like to know what you think about them. So please do let me know in the comment section, ladies and gentlemen. Go nuts. But please do remember the rule. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at the Wossy, where we talk Transformers and any other games that take our fancy. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.